You've done it thousands of times. A box appears. I have read and agreed to the terms. You check it. You didn't read anything. You click the button, the thing you wanted opens up. There's a name for that little ritual. Researchers call it the biggest lie on the internet. Not a lie you tell to other people, a lie you tell thousands of times to a machine about yourself. And here's the part worth sitting with. The lie isn't really yours. You were built to tell it. The document was built to make you. Start with the number. In 2018, two researchers, Jonathan Obar and Ann Oldorf Hirsch, built a fake social network. They called it Name Drop. They asked 543 people to sign up. To join, you had to agree to the privacy policy and terms of service. Normal stuff. The same screen you've seen 1,000 times. Except they'd measured it. A normal adult reading speed, the privacy policy would take about half an hour to read. The terms, another 15 to 17 minutes. 3/4 of people skip the privacy policy entirely. They click the quick option that let them bypass it. The ones who did open the terms spend an average of 51 seconds on a document that takes 17 minutes to read. 51 seconds. Then, I have read and agree. But the researchers had buried two things in that document. One clause said the company could hand your data to the NSA. The other said that by joining, you agreed to give them your firstborn child. And if you didn't have one yet, it was due by 2050. 98% of people didn't notice. They agreed to give away a child to use a website that didn't exist. Now, you could say those were students rushing through a study. Fine. So look at what happens in the real world, when there's a real prize on the other side of the button. In 2010, a video game store called GameStation ran a quiet experiment. On April 1st, they added a line to their online checkout. By placing an order, you granted them a non-transferable option to claim your immortal soul. There was a way out, a link, right there in the terms that nullified the clause and even handed you a £5 voucher just for catching it. 7,500 people bought something that day. Almost none of them found the link. Reports of exactly how many caught it vary, but the company's own spokesman said the prank fooled all of them. A free £5 for reading the fine print. Nearly nobody collected it. 4 years later, a security firm set up free public Wi-Fi in London. To connect, you agreed to the terms. Buried inside something they called the Herod Clause. You agreed to hand over your eldest child for eternity in exchange for the Wi-Fi. 6 people signed it before they shut it off. We laugh at this. The soul, the firstborn, the eternity. It sounds like a prank. It is not a prank. The prank just makes the real thing visible. Because the real terms, the ones you agree to, are doing something quieter and far more serious. And you skip those for the exact same reason. So why do you skip them? You're not stupid. You read other things. The honest answer is that the document is longer than you think, and it is long on purpose. Take PayPal. Its terms, the related policies, run past 36,000 words. Shakespeare's Hamlet? That's about 30,000 words. You agreed to something longer than Hamlet to send your friend $20. And that's one company. You deal with dozens. Your phone, your bank, your streaming, your email, every app on the screen in your hand. Each one a small novel of rules you accepted in 51 seconds. There's a name for what happens to your brain at that point. Information overload. When the pile of text crosses a certain size, you stop engaging with it altogether. You don't skim harder, you give up completely. The researchers found exactly that. The more there was to read, the less likely people were to read any of it. Sit with how strange that is. Making the document longer doesn't make people more careful. It makes them surrender, which means length is not an accident. Length is a tool. A document long enough to be unreadable gets agreed to more easily than a short one, because the short one you might actually read. The unreadability is the feature. And this is the part the prank clauses are hiding in plain sight. While you're laughing about souls and firstborns, the real terms are quietly taking things you care about if you'd read them. The right to sue, the right to a jury, they move you into private arbitration, they take a license to your photos, they agree on your behalf to be tracked. The drastic rights-reducing provisions are right there, and courts uphold them every day. You agreed. The law mostly said so. The fact that no human could reasonably have read it is, usually, not the company's problem. But not always. The law isn't entirely on their side. Because these contracts are so lopsided, courts built a tool to push back on them. If a clause is truly buried, or shocking, or so one-sided it's what the law calls unconscionable, a judge can refuse to enforce it. A term that falls outside what an ordinary person could reasonably have expected can be struck out, even though you clicked agree. So the fine print is not automatically ironclad. It does have a weakness. The catch is who has to use it. That protection doesn't trigger on its own. Somebody has to notice the clause, object, and usually fight it in court after the harm is done, which means the safety net exists for a handful of people with the time, money, and lawyers to reach it. For everyone else, the clause just quietly holds. But here's the thing nobody tells you. This was invented recently on purpose. For most of human history, a contract was two people negotiating. You wanted to buy a horse, you and the seller argued about the horse, and you shook on terms you both actually discussed. The contract was the conversation. That is not what you do now. You don't negotiate with PayPal. You can't. There is no human on the other end and no line to change. You take it exactly as written or you don't get in. That kind of agreement has a name, and the name has a birthday. It's called a contract of adhesion, a take it or leave it contract, written entirely by the powerful side, handed to the other side with no power to change a word. The phrase was coined by a French legal scholar named Raymond Sallès around 1901, and it crossed into American law in 1919 in a Harvard Law Review article by a law professor named Edwin Patterson. What was Patterson writing about? Insurance. Because insurance companies were the first businesses that needed to sign up enormous numbers of strangers fast without sitting down to haggle with each one. So they printed a standard form, same terms for everybody. Sign here. It was efficient, it was cheaper, and it quietly killed the old idea that a contract was a meeting of two minds. By 1943, another legal scholar, Frederick Kessler, looked at where this was going and said the quiet part. The idea of freedom of contract, two equal parties freely agreeing, had become a fiction for these standard forms. There was no freedom in it. One side wrote everything, the other side just adhered. That was 1943. Paper forms, insurance offices. Then it got 100 times faster. The standard form went digital, the signature became a checkbox, the fine print became a scroll bar you don't scroll. And the same take it or leave it contract that an insurance clerk used to hand across a desk now loads in a quarter of a second every time you open anything. The same machine, built in 1919 for insurance, now pointed at every person dozens of times a day. So put the two halves together. On one side, a document engineered to be too long to read because being too long is what makes you give up and agree. On the other side, your brain, which surrenders to information overload exactly the way the length was designed to make it. A system built to produce your consent and a mind built to give it. They were made for each other. That's why you've never won. You are never going to read 30,000 words to send $20. The people who wrote these documents know that better than you do. They are not hoping you read it. They are counting on the fact that you don't. The I have read and agree was never a question. It was a formality wearing the costume of choice. And here's the only part that's in your hands. You will never read all of them. Nobody can. The fight is lost and it was rigged from the start. But you can stop believing the checkbox means what it says. You can know that I agree is the biggest lie on the internet, and that you've been telling it because you were built to and the document was built to make you. The clause about your soul was a joke. The one quietly taking your right to sue was not. You can't read all of them. You can't stop pretending you did. Follow the channel for more.